I was seeing originally very acute type setting, people calling for colds or UTI symptoms or whatever. I really learned to value, one, my past experience, but also that listening skill of listening to the patient because I couldn't touch them, right? So that was the value of really just sitting back and watching and listening and learning from the patient, because they're telling you what's wrong with you. They may not know that they are, but they are. And when I started using that platform for lifestyle medicine, I was a little unsure. Nobody had taught me how to do that through telemedicine. And over time, I found people found it such a refreshing message that they came back. And that's when we started seeing people drop their A1C from 14 to 6 in 3 to 4 months. People were graduating to a different life because I just listened and gave advice of the experience I'd had treating other patients with lifestyle medicine. And it's like you're feeling the pulse, but your ears are your hands. And you're just listening to the pulse of their voice and what they're saying. And that is extremely important skill when you're sitting on this side of it, when someone is literally delivering, their care to you through this platform.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Dr. Sal Lacanina. I am the medical director for LMI and the CHIP program. I want to welcome everyone to the program. And obviously you see that Dr. Marbas is going to come on in a few minutes. We have another exciting show for you. I want to just give another shout out and a thank you to Dr. Linda Schwartz, who was on the program last week. And we just had an exciting show, lots of laughs, lots of education. And I know that we're going to get more today. And actually just listening to Dr. Marbas, and really, I never really thought about the fact that when you do telehealth, how you have different sensations, different senses, if you will, that really will make a big difference in how you perceive the patient and vice versa. So this is going to be an exciting program today. I want to remind all the listeners that there is a chat box. If you could put any questions that you might have in the chat box, and hopefully we'll have time at the end to answer some questions. So let me just give you a little background. I'm sure that a lot of people on the line will already know Dr. Marbas, but she is a double board certified physician in family medicine and lifestyle medicine. And she's actually been using food as medicine since 2012, one of the early adapters, if you will. Previously, she created a new medical model combining the power of nutrient-dense foods and intensive clinical psychological therapy to treat not only food addiction, but chronic disease. And we know that this is something that we all deal with on a daily basis. Dr. Marbas was the first managing editor for the Plantricians Project International Journal of Disease Reversal and Prevention. If you don't know that journal, you have to get to know it. Again, the International Journal of Disease Reversal and Prevention. That is really the key to what we talk about in lifestyle medicine. The journal is focused on bringing plant-based research to the forefront of modern medicine and to the general public, and really integrating what we know about nutrition and lifestyle medicine into real-world healthcare. Dr. Marbas is also the co-founder of Healthy Human Revolution. It's healthyhumanrevolution.com, whose mission is to provide resources that will empower individuals with knowledge, tools, and a mindset to successfully adopt and sustain a whole food plant-based diet. She's also the co-founder of Plant-Based Telehealth, plantbasedtelehealth.com, focused on the prevention and reversal of chronic disease utilizing lifestyle medicine through telehealth. This new service provides access to plant-based lifestyle medicine across the United States, where before the show started, we were just talking about the fact that she and her partners are certified to take care of patients now in 49 different states. She currently holds a license in 49 states. She lives in Colorado. And in Colorado, she persuaded a large health system to create a lifestyle medicine program centered around whole food plant-based diet. And the program has had tremendous success, and we'll talk about that today. At another hospital, she conducted a 1-month study of 26 employees on a plant-based diet. And again, we'll hear more about that research today. All of the employees were actually fed from hospital's kitchen. When I think about that, I have to think twice about that, because we know most hospital kitchens are not serving healthy meals, but obviously this one was. So we'll get more of that information today. Dr. Marbas has also spoken at Golden Veg Fest in Colorado, the International Plant-Based Nutrition Healthcare Conference, and other venues across the country, really talking about the value of whole food plant-based nutrition. Dr. Marbas received her dual degree, an MBA and an MD degree from Texas Tech University Health Sciences School of Medicine and School of Business. She was awarded the university's Gold-Headed Cane Award. I had to read that a few times to know what it was. This is a symbol of excellence in the art of medicine and the care of patients. She actually wrote 7 books while she was in medical school, 6 of which were in a series called Visual Mnemonics, which actually could help all of us. These books use cartoons to help people memorize the vast amounts of information, a system that helped her personally while she was a mom attending medical school. She's, in addition to all the things that I just mentioned, she also is a United States Air Force veteran. She served in the Middle East and South America. She's a wife, a mom of 3 grown children. She's a host of Healthy Human Revolution podcast, an author, a speaker, and an avid runner. And she told me a little while ago that as she's turning 50, she's going to be doing a 50 at 50, a 50K race at 50 years of age. So I tell you, this is amazing. I have to ask Dr. Marbas to join us on the screen, and we will talk about some exciting things today. So Dr. Marbas, wonderful to see you.
Hi, nice to see you. Thank you for having me. It's exciting.
This is exciting. It took me a long time just to get through your all your accomplishments. That's amazing. So we're going to talk today about, telehealth and how, thankfully, it really appears that we're hopefully on the downside of this pandemic, but how the pandemic has really thrust us into the world of telehealth. And I really never thought about it the way you described it in the opening segment, how we have to listen differently now. We have to use our eyes and our ears in a different way to actually help diagnose. And I really love that. So how has the pandemic and you getting involved in telehealth really changed your world?
Quite a bit, actually. So I had been doing telemedicine about 2 years. Well, actually close to 3 years when we launched plant-based telehealth in March of last year, which actually we launched about the week that everything just really took off in the coronavirus. Jeez. So, it's a silver lining in that sense, because it really brought down the perceived barriers of telemedicine. So patients were seeking it, physicians were seeking it. And so that was to our benefit. And telemedicine previous to that, my experience was, like I said, in an acute setting. So I was looking at people calling in with coughs or belly pain or UTI symptoms or sinus. So I had to think about the physical exam was different. I had to ask different questions. I had to listen for certain clues as to the symptoms. And when you just transition to lifestyle medicine, actually, I think it's a much easier burden of care, honestly, because you're just doing more counseling and discussion and that type of thing. So it's turned out very nice. The patients are super excited to have access to physicians who have the knowledge that their current, local physician just doesn't have. And so I think it's a blessing for the patient. It's a blessing for the doctor, because now I can reach those patients in South Dakota. Exactly, I'm sitting here in Colorado, but, I've seen patients from Hawaii, Alaska, California through Florida. And it's been a really fun thing, because everyone's has one consistent ribbon of concern. And honestly, they want to get better and they just don't know how to do that. And so that's been a blessing. And plus just the experience of doing lifestyle medicine every single day with every single patient. I think that's the cool thing, is the burnout is like zero, because honestly, patients are coming to me and they want me to tell them what I want to tell them. So I'm like, this is a win-win.
Exactly. And, just the fact that you're now able to reach patients in almost every state of the union is really incredible, because when you think about it, the number of board-certified lifestyle medicine physicians is still very small compared to the population. So now with what you're doing, you can reach people in distant places that certainly would not physically have access to a lifestyle medicine doctor. So it's congratulations to you, because that is really incredible. Thanks. So when you think about the need for lifestyle medicine and the need for plant-based physicians, So how do you recommend that people actually find one? Because that's the first step. Find a physician. And why do we all, there may be some people on the line that might be thinking, well, why do I really need a plant-based doctor? But you're going to tell us that.
Yes, absolutely. So first of all, you can find us at plantbasedtelehealth.com.
There you go.
And, that's really the goal here is we have 4 physicians, including the amazing Dr. Michael Klaper, Dr. Chris Miller, who actually has her own amazing story and journey of her lupus journey and how that I've known Chris for about a decade. We've been friends for a long time. And she's just a phenomenal human plus a physician. And then we have Dr. Jeff Pierce, who's amazing as well. And he just joined us. We have 2 more physicians joining us in March and an additional one probably the month after that. So we're hoping to grow and expand and scale this up. So we have to build capacity because we have a burgeoning list of patients that need more doctors.
Right. So
we're very thankful for that. And so that's how you can find us. The other one would be maybe asking locally if you have a friend who saw someone, maybe, if you're looking for someone more in person. It's, I'm a big fan of word of mouth referrals because that's that experience. And if you have a good experience, you're more likely it's better than reading something off a website and saying, oh, this one has a 5.5-star rating. It must be pretty good. Well, I don't know. So that would be a couple of ways. And why do you need a plant-based doctor? Well, it depends, right? So I think if you're on medications, especially diabetic medications, hypertensive medications, or if you have, I have a lot of patients with inflammatory bowel disease, different things, it's just one thing to switch over to a healthier diet, but there could be some consequences to that. So one is getting better, and that meaning that you don't need these medications. So the deprescribing component of that is actually an art in of itself. And it's something I've learned over the last almost decade of doing the plant-based diet. It's a very powerful, and now there's also going to be some places where medication is still required. And that's the balance and the art and the science of all this. And it's okay to have those tough conversations with patients saying, you've done a plant-based diet, you've done really well, but I think you might need that statin or you might need this metformin. There's different patients in different stages of life. They're going to respond differently. My hope is to get them as early and as soon as possible to, keep the consequences and complications of the disease as minimal as possible. But there's a lot to transitioning to plant-based diet. For example, my inflammatory bowel disease patients, we have to look at a very different picture because eating raw salads is not going to go well if you're not. So, those are those type of things. And sometimes there's some tweaking. Patients may think something's a whole food and is doing well with them when they're actually not. Some people have food sensitivities as they continue eating a whole food plant-based diet that improves. There's going to be blood test things that need to be looked at, certain nutrient components. Maybe you're not absorbing well. Maybe you're on medications that are preventing absorption of certain things. So there's lots of intricacies. And so, I think it's wise to at least seek the guidance of a plant-based doctor at least once to just get an idea if that's something that you could actually benefit from.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I like the fact that a lot of people can have earlier access to a physician because, there is a lot more telehealth doctors now. And if they don't have to wait for their own primary care physician, being seen at least for that initial consultation to figure out what is happening. For the 3 months, the first 3 months of the pandemic, I did telehealth for our health system. And, I was always cognizant of the fact that I was taking care of people virtually, had to have some, different, more in-depth conversations with those people that really needed to come in and be examined. But I think this opens up a significant world for access, for improved care, just the ability for you to really have that conversation with people about lifestyle is just so cool.
Yes.
So how do your conversations go with people when you really start to broach the conversation about whole food plant-based nutrition? Because that's a real stretch from the standard American meals, if you will.
Right. So honestly, I never really had patients, 100% of my patients I'm going to tell them to eat plants right now in this setting. Prior to that, no. Right. So this is every physician who strives to have as many people on a plant-based diet as possible. You're looking for opportunities. So for example, when I first transitioned to the plant-based diet and started using it in clinic in 2012, early 2012, what I really looked for were the patients who were going to have a need and desire to get better. Right. So these are going to be my individuals with diabetes and hypertension and couldn't lose weight and all these struggles, migraines, skin, you name it. There's a host of things that are going to get better with just changing your diet. And I would create opportunities for that conversation to happen early in the appointment and just ask them, you know, first of all, what is your hope? What if you didn't have the disease? What would your life look like? What would you be looking to do in your life if you weren't burdened by the chronic care that this requires, your attention, your energy, everything, your money, everything, all of these resources. And I get them thinking about a possibility outside of a future that they've thought about before, right? Because most of the time when you're diagnosed with diabetes, like you're going to have it forever, just get used to it. You're going to have these medications. We're going to add more medications. You may lose your eyesight. You may lose a limb. You may, you know, end up on dialysis, all these horrible things, for example, with diabetes. I don't want to have those conversations with patients. That is not why I went into medicine. So the whole idea is to give them hope. And I get really excited. Like when I talk to patients, there's just something about the potential of someone getting better that just makes me, that's why we went into medicine. It's just so extraordinarily fun and enjoyable. And to see someone's eyes light up at like, wait, what? I can possibly reverse this or get better or have less pain. You know, that is such a joy to be invited into someone's life, to have that experience, to be on that journey of health with them. But two, just to see someone understand there's a different possibility. It's like giving someone $1 million. Like we're looking at potentially giving your health. So that's how I broach the subject, is honestly, is like, there's possibility of a very different future with just changing what's on the end of your fork. Thinking about food in a different manner, that it's a healing component versus I'm just eating because I'm hungry or I'm eating because I'm sad, or all those different things that go with food. And honestly, I've had great success with that. Now, it doesn't mean it doesn't come with challenges and patients don't struggle still. Absolutely. But that's where I put the burden on myself to be better at helping them find solutions to the obstacles. You know, like I saw patients this morning. If someone is struggling, I'm like, okay, let's look, what's the hiccup? What can we do to fix it? And I try to let them lead that conversation and let them figure out what are the solutions to these problems and let them start thinking about it. Preparation is key. When I was in the military, practice, because when the time came, it was second nature. You knew exactly what to do. And that's how I found that it works really well with patients. You just have to be open to the conversation and pivoting when you need to. Right.
And you know, you alluded to the fact that you talk to your patients to find out what they're ready to do. You know, in the CHIP program, and there may be some people on the line that don't really know what the program is all about, but I really like the name, the Complete Health Improvement Program, because really what we should be providing is complete health improvement for people, helping them understand that you can actually reverse diabetes, you can reverse cardiovascular disease. And for my patients also, I mean, so many of them will really give you that deer in the headlights look and say, you can actually get better. You know, it's not just the point of stopping the progression. Well, no, you can actually reverse the hardening of the arteries and you can dramatically improve your diabetes. But I like the way that you alluded to readiness. You know, when you talk to your patients, and actually the facilitators on the line really need to think about this also, how do you assess what they're actually ready to do? Because we have all these things in our minds that we want them to do, you know, but how do you actually figure out what they're ready to do?
Right. So you mean it's not as simple as here's a list to go do it?
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Darn it. I was thinking about this whole, you know, I think of it this way. First of all, I see what they're already doing, right? I see what they've done in the past. So it's a good gauge of probably where their willingness and what they're able to do. I look at their social struggles, you know, is the family on board? Are they living by themselves? Are there financial hurdles? You know, these basically these social determinants of health. Basically, we look at that as well in lifestyle medicine. So that's really important to see the external obstacles, number one, but then there's the internal, right? So I think this is where belief leads to behavior. So if they believe they can get better, they will get better. I mean, there's just no doubt about it. So if they believe it, they may have days where they're believing more and less. That's absolutely no problem. I can take that, but it's a matter of their belief. If they really don't understand, one, they don't want to get well, or two, they don't believe they can get well, they won't. because they'll either self-sabotage, find an excuse and fall off the wagon and not show up for follow-up appointments. That's how it is. So if I have someone who's willing to get better and understands they can get better, if I do a good job of explaining and educating why they can get better based on the science, I find that people are a little bit more ready to take the next step. And so what I try to do is like, what is the smallest step, right? This is basic behavior design. I make it easy. I make it something they want to do. And I give them a prompt, right? So they need some type of trigger or prompt built into the routine, make it small enough, a tiny enough action that we can move forward. It may just honestly be as much as, I need you to add an apple a day to your diet. That may be where we start.
Right.
I've been known in regular clinic, in my brick and mortar clinic practice, to make pinky promises with people, literally pinky promises with people. I had a teacher, I'll do anything, but I always remind people too, I shouldn't care more about your health than you do.
Yep.
Okay? But when I did the pinky promise, like, listen, I just need you to walk to the end of your driveway. When can you do that? She goes, well, I drive home every day. I'm in the driveway. I'm like, good. So you're already in the driveway. Before you go in the house, you go down to the end of the driveway and you go back. That's all I want you to do. Nothing else. They're like, she goes, okay. And before you know it, she's walking 2 to 3 miles, lost 60 pounds and reversed her diabetes. Right. But that's how it starts, right? It's like a win. These folks are so used to losses that they try the diet. They'll tell you they've tried every single diet. They've tried everything that I'm like, no. You haven't tried this. You haven't tried it, this approach. And honestly, and I always tell them too, I was like, listen, I have an addiction issue. I have an addiction to you getting better, and I call it veggie cracks. So I'm going to tell you to eat more vegetables. You're going to eat more vegetables. You're going to get better. I get excited because you get better. I get a dopamine hit, and we just keep this going. So I really need you to continue my veggie crack addiction. And, humor is really important. Making sure that you're accessible is really important, because you need to be, as a physician, I feel like we really need to be the guiding light to help them. And then when they're ready to jump and sprout their wings and take off the nest, go for it. I said, put me out of business. That's the whole point. Right, I don't want to have to be having these conversations with people, because that means everybody's well. They're living their life we were put here on earth to do. And this world would be incredible if people weren't burdened by chronic disease. I mean, it's just so true. Blows my mind to think about the potential that's being lost every single year from suffering, early death, morbidity. So that's how I approach it, is just having consistent conversations with people and trying to ask them, well, what went wrong? Where can we go better? What can you do? Tell me your solution. And just helping them figure it out.
Yeah, in my office, I have my computer hooked up to this giant television screen, and I actually show, in a lot of cases, the Make Health Last video. For the people on the line that don't know that video, it's a YouTube video that's phenomenal, because it really shows the dichotomy of the same guy aging in the standard American way versus on the other side, he's aging in a lifestyle medicine way, if you will. And when you really think about the reality of how most people end up, spend the last 10 or 15 years of their lives, they spend those last years in sickness, not in wellness. Right. And when you really start to listen to a physician or a healthcare provider or a CHIP facilitator that teaches you the value of the simple things that you can do, eat healthy, be active, make sure you get enough sleep, those pillars of lifestyle medicine, deprescribing, which I'm sure a lot of people don't even know that term. You're going to actually take medicine away from me? You're not going to write another prescription? Yeah. It's just another deer in the headlights look that you get from people. But then when they realize they don't have to be on all these medications, and I can do, the things that our grandparents told us to do. Eat your vegetables, go outside and run around, go sleep, don't sweat the small stuff. All those things really make such a big difference. Yep. You also alluded to motivational conversations, yes, which I know is something that we definitely talk about in the CHIP program. When you identify there's barriers that the individuals have when they know that they need to do something, but they're not getting it done. How do you have those motivational conversations with people to actually move them along that spectrum?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So honestly, I think of motivation as the weakest link, right? Because we can't rely on willpower or motivation, because honestly, my willpower waxes and wanes within, 60 seconds. I'm a woman. This is how it works, but motivation is a real struggle. But what I look to do for them is make this so easy. right? So we look at where the problem was. Maybe they decided, I want to go run 3 miles a day, 7 days a week. Why don't we try walking around the block 1 day a week this week, and next week we go to 2, because we all have that New Year's resolution. Let's get it going. We have energy and excitement. Maybe it's for 48 hours, maybe it's for 2 weeks, but then by February 1st, none of us are sticking to it because we haven't built this into our lives. That's a sustainable pattern. And that's where BJ Fogg is a friend of mine. And I took a really intensive course with him, and I've interviewed him on the podcast, some other cool stuff. His book was so amazing to me. And I have another friend, Dr. Judd Brewer, he's an addiction psychiatrist. He's also plant-based, called The Craving Mind. So I've learned so much from the point of understanding the behavior design component of this is really critical. And then you can help people understand they don't have to be the victim of their own compulsions or cravings or, like, I really need to have that ice cream, or I really need to have that block of cheese. I'm like, well, let's step back and be mindful. So it's bringing mindfulness into that and discussing, the motivation is they want to get better, right? There are going to be days though that they're tired. And I don't care how much they want to lose 100 pounds. They're like, I just don't really care. I'm tired and I want that cheese or I want that whatever. That is where we need to say, when those moments come, we have to build your environment in your mind and practice these like a muscle, the mindfulness side of this. So that when you're challenged and you have this craving, how do you halt it? How do you stop just the habit of going to the refrigerator and grabbing something and eating it before you even realize what happened? How do you halt the actual behavior and think about what's going on, engage your critical thinking skills and say, whoa, is this really what I want to do? But still leave it open that they can make this decision, right? There's not these rigid rules necessarily, but just having this conversation within their own mind is really powerful, and giving them ways to escape and, having solutions where it's making it harder. So if I make a behavior harder, for example, if we just keep home safe, great. The one rule is don't bring that stuff into the house. However, there are other people who live in a house. They'll bring in stuff. Okay, then what can we do to help minimize that trigger, the thing that might trigger you to eat something? Like, is it the smell of them cooking something? Is it them bringing Chinese food home? Is it them, putting whatever in the house? The chips are right there on the bowl and the counter. You're like, how can we prevent that from triggering you when you really struggle with like food cravings and some different things? So I think the behavior design is really important. I would encourage anyone to read, Tiny Habits by BJ Fogg and The Craving Mind by Dr. Judd Brewer. I'll tell you, those were really helpful. And I will draw out what behavior looks like. So behavior happens when you have 3 things in place: a motivation, you also have the ability to do something, and a prompt. And so if you don't have those 3 happening at the same time, I don't care what the behavior is, it will not happen, right? So for example, I tell patients, when you got to go to the bathroom, your bladder's going, hey, I'm full, I got to go. So there's your prompt. You go do the behavior, the ability, the toilet's right there, you go, and boom, you're all set. That behavior happens, right? So it's the same thing with anything else. But if I could, when your motivation's low, right, we need to make, if something you don't want to do, we got to make it really hard by the food being 5 miles down the road in the store. Or I make it really easy when the motivation's low. There's apples and bananas sitting on my counter ready to go. The fruit and vegetables are already cut up in the fridge, ready to go. I've batch cooked on Sunday, so my food is ready for me to heat up. I push a button on the microwave or heat it up on the stove or whatever. That's already done. So those, when you have high motivations, let's make things that are hard to do. Maybe it's the batch cooking. Maybe you're well rested on Sunday. You go grocery shopping. You have energy. You're ready to go for the week. Boom, you do your batch cooking. You get it ready to go. That's how you do it. So that's really important. It's the discussion of like, you have control of these things. You don't have to be the victim. And then when you are not in control, you walk through the mall and you smell the Cinnabon. What do you do then? What's going through your mind? For example, I interviewed Dotsie Bosch. She's an Olympian, the cyclist, vegan.
Oh, yeah. Right.
Switch for good, right? So I interviewed Dotsie, and I think it's wonderful. You won an Olympic medal. That's fantastic. But I was more interested in her history of how did you overcome an eating disorder and your cocaine habit? Oh, wow. That actually is more important to me than the other stuff. Yeah. I was like, So, okay, I get you've done the Olympian thing, fabulous, but I really want to understand how you did this, because this is more in tune with where my patients are.
Exactly.
It's not necessarily the cocaine habit, but it's certainly these very serious habits that are damaging to your life, your physical, your spiritual, everything, can potentially deadly. She goes, well, I found a counselor that would let me do what I want. I was like, what? I was like, what are you talking about? She goes, she just let me do what I want. And before I know it, I didn't want to do it anymore. I was like, okay, you're going to have to explain that one to me. She goes, listen, this is what she did. She goes, she made me go buy these little blue dots. I'm like, okay. And she said, she made me place them on all the things that were triggers. There's a trigger, the prompt, right, to the behavior. Remember, keep that in mind. She goes, and maybe place them on all the things that would trigger my behavior, be it vomiting because she was a bulimic, or maybe she would, I don't know about the cocaine habit. We didn't get into that, but we did get into, she put it on the toilet, she put it on the refrigerator, she put it on anything that caused her stress that would lead to those behaviors. And she goes, before you know it, she made me, once I placed them on all those places that would trigger my behavior, she said, when I felt the compulsion and I found myself in the midst of doing this behavior or this habit that I was into, she made me promise stop for 30 seconds and start asking myself questions. So she's using the power of curiosity, which when you use the curiosity and you're learning about yourself, whether you're asking yourself questions or learning about some other subject, you do get a dopamine hit, right? It's a rewarding moment, because everyone loves learning something new that they're interested in. Especially when you start sitting back and you start asking yourself questions like, how am I feeling? What is going on in my body? I'm being mindful of my experience. What was going on that led me to this behavior? And she goes, at the end of 30 seconds, she said I could go do the behavior or I could decide not to. She goes, but choice was mine. Right. And so what happened was the first month I was like, I did my 30 seconds, asked myself these questions, like, she went and did it. She goes, but before you know it, 3 or 4 months later, I just didn't want to do it anymore, because honestly, there was no reward in it, because I've asked myself these questions and the answers were revealing to me that I really didn't want to do it. And I guess what? She goes, I've been clean for, I don't know, 20, 30 years, however long it's been. And I was like, holy moly, that is mindfulness. That is really the key to stopping. But it was such a powerful story. I was like,
that's a great story.
Oh my goodness, that's bad. I tell that story all the time.
That's a great story. Well, you mentioned a number of things that I'm going to summarize at the end. Well, let's get to a few questions before we finish here. I think you can see them also in the chat.
Yes, sir.
So Danny asks, are there any well-balanced guides on how to transition to a plant-based diet, a vegan diet, like over a month or so?
I think it just depends on your personality. So I literally did this overnight with 3 teenagers in my house and my husband. But I did all the cooking. I brought in all the food. Some people need to do it. If you're a diabetic or you're sick, I try to get people there as quickly as possible. But I also understand there's going to be physical limitations. There's going to be mental limitations. There's a lot of different limitations. So I asked them, how quickly can you do this? How quickly do you want to do this? So then I just say, let's start with one meal, right? So if I can do breakfast, great. Let's do that for 3, 4 days, 7 days, whatever. Then we do breakfast, lunch, and then we do breakfast, lunch, dinner. And honestly, usually within 21 days, most of the time it's less than that, I will have someone transition fully. Now, that doesn't mean it's a perfect transition, but we're well on our way.
Yeah, I like the idea of really giving people written instructions and having them actually write them what they say that they're going to do. Well, I'm going to start exercising. Well, what does that actually mean?
Yes.
And I think the more specific you can have them become, and they're the author of that change.
Yep.
And I like what you said before, change your beliefs so that you can change your behavior.
Yeah.
And if you can build that into your life, you can really go far along the spectrum. You also mentioned about caring more about your own health. And I've actually said this to patients. I'm sure you've said it the same thing. You as the patient have to care more and work harder than I will work on your health. If you're not willing to do that, then we're going to fail together for sure. So,
and I just say, it's like a marriage, right? This relationship, this doctor-patient relationship. When someone needs a little help, I'm willing to carry that burden for them to a degree. Obviously, I can't do everything. But as I said, the whole point here is for you to get better and better and better, and you don't need me anymore. You might check in once a year, but the whole goal for you is to be off and on your own. And I said, and now you're going to spread the message and you're going to change lives.
Right.
So, I don't want them to ever think this is a one and done deal, that they only improve
Right.
their lives. It's like, you're going to improve other people's lives, whether
Absolutely.
you are aware of that or not. And that's a very powerful message to tell yourself every single day that you do this.
Yep.
And yeah, you're exactly right. But it varies day to day. Sometimes most of the time it's a really soft conversation, encouraging, but there are days I'm like, you just have to stop that.
Right. Exactly. Feel like you're talking to your kids. Right. Exactly.
Oh my goodness. Parenthood. It prepared me for this very well.
Exactly. Well, you also mentioned about, when we talk to patients about doing some simple things about changing their physical environment, not bringing the chips into the house, making your kitchen more of a pharmacy with FARM,
Right.
what you mentioned before, I think is even more important. You have to change the environment in your brain.
Yes.
In order to change the environment that's outside of you, because if you don't change what's in here, nothing really gets done. So I think that was a fabulous point. And I'm gonna pick up on your pinky promise things and see if I can get my patients to do that. That was very good.
I'm willing to do anything.
Right.
Promise.
Right.
It on.
Yeah, little stuff. You mentioned the book Tiny Habits by B.J. Fogg. Is that the author?
Yes.
And The Craving Mind by whom?
Dr. Judd Brewer. I'm going to see if I have those.
Dr. Judd Brewer.
I don't have them right next to me, but yeah, Judd Brewer. What a great heart. He's just a sweet man. They're both amazing. I think BJ is vegetarian, and but I've convinced Judd, and I started this conversation with Judd about going plant. He'd already been kind of mostly plant-based, more pescatarian. But then talked to Rich Roll, and he goes, well, Rich Roll really sealed the deal, but you were right, Laurie. Yes. I'm like, yeah, I know. Fine. Rich, I'll take Rich.
Exactly. Well, the transition, though, was so important. And, going from the standard American diet to a really healthy way of living is certainly a big transition. And in the CHIP program, we're actually redoing the content for the program this year. We're calling it CHIP 4.0 so that we can really help people understand you don't have to go from A to Z overnight. If some people want to live more of a pescatarian life, we're not going to crucify them over that. What we really want to do is make people understand what the science of nutrition really shows. Right. And I love. I've talked to Mike Greger a number of times in the past, and if I had a question about any particular thing related to nutrition, he's so good because he told me this one time. He says, you're just on the wrong side of the science. And I said, well, what do you mean by that? And he, goes on to tell you what the science really shows. I think we as lifestyle medicine physicians really have to be very clear on the science.
Yes.
And help people understand and translate that science down to the public so that they can actually use that and not think that, being on a keto diet is really the thing to do. I mean, it drives like, I can see you're having tremors too when you hear that.
So many keto conversations with patients. It's just, it'll blow your mind. But my blood sugars got better. It's like, of course they got better. You weren't eating carbs.
I lost weight. Right.
Exactly. But I was like, why do we have this, mechanism in our body? What is this emergency response system that we have in case of famine? It wasn't meant for us to manipulate and eat these high fat foods, which are making you basically more insulin resistant, which you're literally carb intolerant. But I was like, look at my type 1 diabetics. This is amazing. When I get my type 1 diabetic that was on a ketogenic diet, we cut their insulin use usually in half or more. Yep. And they eat many, many more carbs than someone who's the same age, type 1. It just blows my mind. And I said, no.
At one of the last ACLM conferences, I sat and had lunch with Robbie Barbaro.
Yep.
And, for the people that don't know who he is, he's one of the authors of Mastering Diabetes, the Mastering Diabetes book, him and Cyrus Kambata. And he had this giant bowl and he filled this thing up with as much vegetables and fruits and like a couple of mangoes. And it was incredible to watch him eat all these carbs, right? And natural sugars. And he tells me my A1C is 5.4. I'm like, that is a testament to how important it is just to eat whole foods that come out of the ground, natural foods, and stay away from all the processed junk that people eat. We're almost out of time. I don't see too many other questions, but I want to ask you, what action plans or action things can people do and take away from today's discussion with you that will help them to be healthier today?
Yeah, I think honestly, the big one that a lot of people don't really think about or employ on a regular basis is, where are the problem points, right? So what are those sticking points that you're seeing over and over and over again that are leading you to, quote unquote, fall off the wagon or make unhealthy choices on a consistent basis?
Right.
And so whatever that is, dissect it, right? Set it down, write it down, and say, okay, I eat when I'm bored, or I eat when I'm stressed, or I'm whatever it is. Okay, what were the events that led to that? What was your environment? What was your emotional state? What was your sleeping? Look at all the different factors that led to that moment in time
Right.
for that behavior to occur. And then you can say, well, what can I change to make sure that that sticking point doesn't, one, either happen, or two, I'm prepared for it when it does happen. So is it because eat when I'm bored? Well, maybe I need to stick a blue sticker on my refrigerator and go, am I really hungry? Let's do
Right.
it. This body, is this body hungry, or is this body bored? Okay. Or is it, I never have the food in the house that when I'm actually hungry, that's healthy. Well, why
Right.
don't you have the food in the house? Okay, fix it. Go shopping, have the food delivered. Ask whoever's in your home to have a sit down conversation, saying, listen, I have diabetes. I need to get well. I need
Absolutely.
to eat food. Communication is so important. And that's why I tell my patients, this is telemedicine. Bring that husband or child.
Exactly. Right.
I will have this conversation with them. I don't really care. I will have those conversations. It doesn't matter to me. It really.
Well, that's a great point, because, if I'm sitting in the office and I can see that the patient's spouse or significant other is more of the problem child, and we're bringing in the chips and such, I can't call that person into the office because they're not there,
Right.
but they're in the house when you're doing the telehealth. You're virtually in their home. I like that idea. So you can say, hey, bring that person over. They need to hear this.
I have lots of extended. And the other thing that's really important to think about with that, just speaking of other people in the home that aren't your patient necessarily,
Right.
I call it collateral damage of a plant-based diet. So, you may have someone, like a couple, who go on a plant-based diet, the wife does, and the husband, by choice or not choice, eats the same foods.
Right.
Oh, suddenly their blood pressure gets better too. And they're
Right.
So I always ask, do they have health issues? Are they eating this way? Please look for this, just so that they're fully aware that, and I've been known to bring in a patient, an extra,
Sure.
wasn't my original patient, that is now my patient, and adjust things very quickly because they had to, because it was getting serious. And so those are some other things to think about. But honestly, for the patient, who's really just the takeaway for me is, look at what you can do to help prepare for the sticking points, because that is where you're going to find this to be sustainable. Start small, build it somewhere into a routine already. For example, when I run after I walk the dog. I already got my shoes on. I'm ready.
Right.
She's already been out. I'm ready to go. I run right up. That is my daily routine for that. Just build it somewhere that makes sense. And if you can do that, you should be successful. And of course, like I said, there'll be hiccups. The next day, it doesn't mean you've lost everything. Just get back on the road. Keep going.
Exactly. Have that easy button. And I like the idea of collateral improvement. Anybody else in your house can actually improve their health based on what you're doing.
Yes.
Before we leave, I just want to highlight the fact that in the offers, there is the information about plant-based telehealth. So if anybody wants more information about your practice and how you find the telehealth doc, that information is up there. I want to thank you. This is exciting, and I'm sure we could talk for hours more about the benefits of lifestyle medicine, but I think we've given the audience a number of tips that they can use for themselves and also for the audience. And really just thank you for being such a champion for healthy living and all the stuff that you've done over the years to really make people understand that there is a better way to care for ourselves. And I think if we really just adopt the tenets of lifestyle medicine, I think the whole world can become a healthier place. So
Absolutely.
thank you so much for being here today. I want to thank Darryl Ludington, who is our fabulous producer behind the scenes. This would not happen without him. And also to thank the audience. We have a number of people that join us, CHIP facilitators, physicians, people literally from around the world. We get people from other countries joining in. So the influence goes far and wide. So let me leave you with the last word for the audience.
I say, just do one step thing better than you did the day before. And just remember, it's just so important that you just don't give up hope. Just know that your future can be better and brighter when you're investing now, right? So what you're doing today is going to have vast consequences, not only for yourself, but your family, your neighbors, because everyone's watching. And the words are spoken and they go, but people are watching you. And just remember, sometimes it's those people that are the most important to us, your children, your spouse, your parents, your siblings, and that you're making a difference, not only your life, the effort's worth it, but a lot of others. And those are really the cool ones, is to see people excited because they've helped someone else. So just keep doing it.
Absolutely. Well, next week, and just remember for the people that are on the line, these sessions are all they're all recorded, so you can go back and watch them again. And next week on the 24th, we have Dr. Christy Arts and Caro Tibby. They're going to be talking about the CHIP successes that they've seen at Spectrum Health. So Dr. Marbas, thank you so much for being here. It's been a pleasure to talk to you, and I wish you a wonderful day, and God bless you and your family.
Thank you. You too. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Bye now.